All right, and we're back for match number 2. We're on the draw. I don't think you can really reasonably keep this hand in the dark. It's like, it is a keep against some decks, but without the second land and any removal spell, I'm trying to talk myself into it. I feel like is this keepable ever? So I get to Surveil and Double Bobble, looking for some spell. It's actually probably fine to keep. Like, it's a really fast Murktide, which could matter. Great if they don't play anything on turn 1, so got that going for me. I think we need to bin this land. I guess I should have bobbled them first, right? That's like the better way to do this. Sequence, bolt on top. See if we draw a land and if we have to actually use the bobble or not. Okay, we don't have to then. Yeah, now we can bobble trick ourselves at some point. So playing the fetch land here lets us bobble trick ourselves and disguise this Steam Vents, but we don't fully know what we're trying to bobble trick for still. So I kind of just want to shock the Steam Vents. It does make a counterspell a little more obvious, but I'd rather save the fetch for later. They get the Thundering Falls, very powerful. Yeah, that's the other thing about the fetch, is it could get a Thundering Falls at some point. Prudent's fine. I do think Prudent is one of the best cards in the Murktide Mirror. It's arguably a card that you could try to counterspell in a spot like this. Just filling the yard up and helping them find what they need. Alright, so this DRC is not a card I want to play out really right now, knowing that they're very likely to have just a removal spell for it. So I'm just going to fetch an island and Prudent here. I guess, so what I want is another... I need more cards in the yard. That's what I need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Punisher's like iteration, kind of. So I guess I shouldn't fire this off quite yet. Sitting on these 2 counter spells is pretty reasonable. I need to bobble them here, just because I need to find a land myself. Shredder pretty nice here to play. It'll make them play on their own turn. Like, they can't bolt end step, or they risk getting blown out, and then when they do go to bolt on their turn, if that's what they have, this gives them Delirium. The tempting part about Counterspell here, I think Counterspell is a good play, is that if they cast another spell, it triggers Shredder, right? They could just have another bolt or heat and upkeep, because we knew about that one bolt. They have another bolt. That's fine, I think, this time. I'll play Channeler 1, Channeler 2, and just pass. Could preordain for max greed, but if we don't find the land, it's pretty bad. Okay, heat's fine. They didn't heat a second time, so they're playing around Pierce, so they might not have another removal spell right now. Passing with Dress Down and Counterspell could be pretty good. It takes away like their best lines of Murktide, which Murktide definitely feels like a card they could have. Like they didn't play a DRC, they don't have a Ragavan. Feels like they have like Counterspells, Murktide, maybe Iteration. So I think I'm gonna start by attacking. Because if they show us a removal spell when we attack, then it reduces their hand by a little bit in terms of the hidden information, but like maybe if they don't kill this, then we probably still don't want to preordain. So I guess either way, we don't want to preordain. Just playing the land and passing here is fine. Dress Down, notably, like really important. Stops Murktide from being really big. So all right, now I'll preordain main phase to get my surveil value. Bolt. It's probably good enough to keep. Considering we have this unanswered Dragon Rage Channeler. Oh, now they drew an answer. Okay. So on one hand, we don't want to be the one to flinch first and like play a Murktide into their counter spells. On the other hand, we don't want to let them draw out of a bad hand, but it feels like their hand's like counter spells and Murktide, so we kind of just want to fight them or like wait for them to go first. You know, a second counter spell makes me want to do that even more. Maybe I want a 6th land now. Ooh, maybe this DRC is actually also pretty good. Hard to say, because if they just drew a removal spell, it's not that great. But it feels like they did draw the removal spell off the top that turn, so this removal spell could be good. Or this DRC could be good, I mean. Petty Theft the DRC? Really? Okay, that's fine with me. If that's how you want to use your Petty Theft, that's fine by me. I'll just bolt it. Alright, start with Dress Down. They Spell Snare. Okay. Feels like we're gonna both have 8/8 Murktides, but I'll try to counterspell here. I guess the risk is letting them cycle these cards. If they have another Murktide, we get in really big trouble. Still Pierce. It's not gonna be very helpful anymore. Don't want to play out the DRC, I don't think. Just has to chump attack. I guess if they have another Murktide, it's actually pretty good. Okay. And then, like, next turn, if they pass, we just attack with both. So if they want to eat our DRC, we at least get 8 damage through, which could put them in a tough spot. Yeah, I like this to play around that second Murktide being too powerful. Alright, Ragavan, I don't think I can really afford to counterspell here. I need to save that for something more important. Also, they do try to block DRC. It's like we could have Unholy Heat, right? Alright, start off with Expressive Iteration. Don't need a land. It resolves. Okay. Yeah, Borrower to exile. Petty Theft this. I guess binning Bolt because Ragavan's gonna hit us and hit Bolt. Or topping Bolt because if Ragavan hits Bolt, then we're probably winning. Those are like the lines of thinking. So I guess we just need to determine which one is the correct line of thinking. So if we top Bolt, attack them for 11. If they have like an Otawara, things could get dicey. The risk is if we bin Bolt, they could end up hitting something like a Murktide Regent, right? Is that... Yeah, I feel like Bolt is like a acceptable risk. They have another... Oh, so the Murktide gets bounced to their hand, so they get to recast a Murktide, right? And they end step Otawara. Okay. Our Murktide would only be a 6/6. Bolts the DRC. It puts a card in our yard, so an instant in our yard to make a 7/7. We dash here. They have Murktide and 3 unknowns. I think spell snaring this is good because it also turns off our Murktide for the turn. Wondering how they got our list. They have 1 Borrower, 1 Dress Down main deck. Then they Unholy Heat. Now if we counterspell, we can play an 8/8 Murktide. And we get to spell pierce their stuff. Or what did they target? They targeted the spell snare. Okay. Let's see. Don't pay. Counterspell resolves. Now we can spell pierce this. Maybe this wasn't good for us because it feels like now there's like a lot of, there's like some decent hits for them off the top. At 2. We could have just hit Bolton 1. Maybe we should have just given up on and let the Unholy Heat happen. I wanted my... Okay, that's fine. I wanted my... my Murktide to be I guess we can dash and then they have to block now. Or they had your removal spell for turn. Alright, we'll pick up game 1. That was a pretty tricky game. We might have made a mistake, I'm not sure, but things were pretty interesting. So usually I have to take out my Ragavans, like shave a DRC or 2. Seems like a reasonable plan to me. Especially on the draw, it's hard to connect with Ragavan. And then DRC, I mean, it's nice with the 1 Underworld Breach, but it's another card that's going to trade 1/1 for their removal. On the draw, I like to have a lot of removal spells. On the play, I think maybe you can like bring in the Ragavans and actually shave some of your removal, expecting that they might be boarding out their DRCs. That's pretty common. The Abrade is nice, it's flexible. I mean, if for some reason they still have Hearse in their deck, then it gets that, but also just tags any of their cheap creatures, so some flexibility there. It's a greedy keep. It's a greedy, greedy keep. I think that it's definitely a reasonable keep, though. I like all these preordains. The matchup tends to be more about just like having a lot of cards and less about just aggroing your opponent out. So we'll let the cat out. Sorry. In a minute he'll be back at the door meowing again, asking to come back in, but so be it. Yeah, often this matchup tends to be about setting up your Murktides and your, iterations and counter spells. So a hand that has, like a bunch of cantrips and a Murktide is usually pretty premium. Well, we just desperately need to find a land, so we do find it. Digging for another land, we find it. Nice. They'll get to maybe resolve an iteration if they do go for it. Which is fine. It's not ideal, but it's beatable. I'm gonna wait on fetching, knowing that I have a lot of pretty undesirable cards on the bottom, like a Braid and two other 1-mana removal spells are not the cards I want to be drawing right now. The counterspell would be a card I want to draw, but I'm just going to draw it anyways. One of my other three, like a god. Alright, and they're passing. They don't have a land drop. This could be an opportunity for us to just cycle Dress down to try to find us a land drop. And then they have to start jamming. But, yeah, we probably should do that. Shredder. Iteration. We'll cast this iteration. I assume it's going to get, like Spell Snare or something. That's fine. Spell Snare is just always going to be really good in the mirror, so trading it for something at least. Letting them go back down to 6 cards. Not ideal, but they flash Borrower. Okay. That's fine with me. I think that using flashing Borrower like this is generally a mistake. You want to be saving it to bounce a Murktide, considering that's the card that the matchup usually ends up revolving around, so. So fetch, counterspell. We're one short of double Murktide, which would be a tempting play. I think counterspelling this is still pretty good though. If we draw a fetch land, we can double Murktide and go absolutely crazy. Their Murktide would just be a 6/6 right now, so it's actually not very scary. You always want to keep track of how big their Murktide would be because they don't want to play a Murktide that's smaller than that either. Ooh, the attack. Dash Ragavan. Well, Dash Ragavan is less scary when they only have 1 mana. I mean, there's a lot of hits here that just aren't going to do much for them. If they actually find a spell, we get to double Murktide, funny enough, so it doesn't even end that badly for us. They find a spell that does nothing. So is this the right spot to double Murktide? Or could we just keep waiting? We could go Shredder plus, or like DRC Bolt here. I don't hate that. Oh, they're gonna dash Ragavan. I'm stupid. Now I have to counterspell this Ragavan. Ugh. Gross. Still don't want this Bolt, but... yeah, probably not doing that was a smart play. Probably not doing what I did was a smart play. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I can do like a 13, 13 and a... yeah, that's a good play. Pitchcast Subtlety is fine. Definitely. I'll put that on top. I'm still gonna play a 7/7 here. Alright, and we win the match. Awesome. Running good, running good. Alright. Flashing a code up on screen. Thanks for watching. Alright, we'll see you next match.